auntie calls me and says, "Hey, TV work pannalada, konja sari panni kudra." You've all gone through it, right? There is no connection between, because this is what we have been doing, right? We learn everything in two-dimensional printed paper with no context, and when they ask us to change the fuse or switch the three-phase to make it work, yes or no? All of us, right? But something sucks with the education system. Then here we need to do something about it. I don't blame the student. Even the first bencher is going through the same experience today. And that's because this is the curse of context-free knowledge. What I mean by context-free knowledge is, we focus largely on irrelevant stuff. We ignore some very relevant stuff. And whatever is relevant, we learn without context. இதை எங்க உபயோகிக்க போகிறோம், எதனால் இது முக்கியம் அப்படிங்கிற அந்த 2-3 important facts கூட சரியா கொடுக்காததுனால we kind of dumb down the student, we drain his energy and his interest and passion, and by the end of 4 years he's just waiting to give up on life, right? I have seen this through hundreds of interviews and talent searches that I've been part of. So our life lesson has been, our most important education comes on the job, right? That is where you actually learn. In fact, most kids, most millennials these days switch 3-4 jobs before they settle on their long-term passion. So that's the learning. That's where they're actually learning. So we were profoundly impacted by this worldview, and that's what runs Zoho Park today. Moving on to a related topic, what we think of academic credentials. So we actually ran a poll in 2004. We asked many of our employees. We were around 2,500 strong then. We had engineers, we had designers, we had artists, we had writers, marketers. We asked them this question: how useful do you find your college education for your current role in the company? You are doing productive work, you are earning a good salary, you are in a successful company. Now go back to what you learned at college and tell me, are you able to see a correlation, connection? And these were the results. The green one there says it was really useful. So 1/5 of them actually said, yeah, avangala the first bench Hermione of Harry Potter type group of people, right? They were those successful, lucky people who kept doing well from first bench, from first standard all the way to final year at college. They were the first rankers, front benchers. But look at the other stats. College was good, but I fooled around. Wasted time, dad's money, mom's money. Massive time waste, teachers were no good. These were statistics from more than 2,700 employees across the organization in 2004. We ran the poll again in 2011, similar results. So that was the first thing. The philosophy was, college study, whatever happened in school, wasn't really relevant to what's happening at work. The second was, we weren't a great brand. We weren't a famous brand. So we couldn't go to great colleges on first day and recruit the top talent. So we were called Bamboo Systems after our CEO's father's name. And then we were called AdventNet. Nobody even, like I told you, no interface. We were building software for printers and projectors. Who wants to work for companies like that? So the necessity was, we needed to get talent, but we weren't given the right talent. Most of our interaction was through word of mouth, through friends connecting with us and so on, relatives joining us and so on. And the senior managers in the company started realizing something too. When we recruited talent, when finally these boys and girls landed up at our company, we asked them some simple questions, we gave them some simple assignments. These were the questions that came up from the managers. இந்த பையன் காலேஜ்ல என்ன கத்துண்டானே எனக்கு தெரியல. Did he learn anything at all? When will she start being productive? If she expects training after 4 years of computer science at a famous engineering university, if she expects me to train her in Java, something is missing somewhere. So we said, let's start a simple experiment, right? So we said, let's start a small experiment. Let's think big, but let's start small. So we went to a nearby school. We gave them a basic aptitude test in English and mathematics. We didn't choose students who were anyway going to medical or engineering fields. We got students who were in the economically slightly set back community, because they were anyway not going to go to these colleges. Too exorbitantly costly these routes were. We set 2 students on 5 students on 2 teachers gave them just 3 subjects: English, mathematics, and software engineering. So, I'm not able to get them. Yeah. So these were the topics we taught them, and really magic happened. Right? So we were able to get students who had not touched the computer by class 12. Most of them were Tamil medium students. Given the right amount of freedom and responsibility, given the exposure to the organization, in the middle of Zoho Corporation, we set up Zoho University, and we were able to see a day-night change within 18 months. So these students were taken from schools, government schools, most of them. We have passed out 475 students till now. My own son is the 474th student. He just finished Zoho University. So each of these kids come from a varied background. They are trained in just English, maths, and computer science. English, we don't teach them Wren and Martin grammar. Instead, we expose them to movies in English. Make them read newspapers. Make them read articles in technology and business. That is context, providing contextual learning. Mathematics, we don't drill all the way beyond calculus, which is what most engineering does. So we strengthen the foundation in 10th standard and 12th standard mathematics. And computer science is different from software engineering. Most engineering colleges seem to teach computer science, how to write programs, how to create software is a different ball game. And that's what we focus on, because we know it. 5,000 employees in our organization are experts in that, and they take that essence and impart it to the students. Much more learning happens in the corridors, not in the classrooms. Much more learning happens in the intranet, where our CEO makes posts about what's coming in 2018. How they are handling a competitor. These are things we expose to these students early in the game, and they are able to. And no college can boast of an alumni network like ours, because every one of these alumni students is absorbed into the company. We have 475 seniors that these students can look up to, ask doubts. It could even be personal, unprofessional doubts. Right? They get their doubts clarified. They work with them, get career changes done, and so on. First 4 years, this is what happens to a college student. They spend money, they spend money, they spend more money, they spend more money, and then they wonder if they'll get a good job. This is the typical 4-year transform of a college student. Compare it with the Zoho University kid. On day 1, we give them stipend. We give them 8,000 rupees on day 1. Every month, we give them that money. 3 times a day food, internet access, flip the classrooms where there is no teacher talking down. Instead, each student can watch videos and learn at their own pace, and collaborative rather than competing. Right? In most colleges and schools, we compete. Instead, we say collaborate. There is no ranking system. There is no exam. Because the moment you set an exam, previous night's logging comes in. Next day evening, forgetting comes in. So there are no exams here. So that's how we have been running it. So every year, by the end of 4 years at the university, 24 months is how we run the university. They are employed after 2 years. And by the time this guy reaches the same point that the college guy reached, he's already earning more than that guy's salary. So 425 out of 5,400 students never went to college in our company. Right? That's how large the Zoho University impact is. So academic records don't really matter. That is our learning. Every day, even today, hundreds of resumes come in. We have a software that digests their resumes and shows what's important. We simply throw away all the degrees, the qualifications, the gold medals, etc. they have reached. We look for what projects they have done, what collaborative work they have done, what they have the maker instinct in them. That's what we look for, and that can't be looked for in a printed piece of paper. That's the learning that we have had in this experience. Moving on to interviews, how we interview people. See, these are questions that typically come up in a Google interview or a Microsoft interview. How many golf balls can you fit into Boeing? How many petrol bunks are there in New York? You're supposed to think through, visualize, do number crunching, mathematics. Look at this question. How would you move Mount Fuji? This is a very famous question. In fact, there is a book on this name. How would you move Mount Fuji, and 147 equally hard puzzles they ask you at the Microsoft interview. Right? So over time, we also tried all this. right? We said how many petrol bunks are there in Guduvanjeri and things like that, right? But over time, the one thing we learned was questions like these in interviews only evaluate how good these kids are in answering questions like this, right? So they game the system. So interviews produce static snapshots. Who they are is what they have been, right? Not what they present themselves on that morning. People are dynamic. They are capable of learning and adaptation. Whenever you propose a system, they look for how do they get out of the system? How do they game the system? Subverting authority, right? If you are an authority, how do I subvert you? That is what we focus on. Even we at this stage do the same thing. So they are intrinsically unknowable and actually unpredictable, these people. It's hard enough to know oneself, right? உன்னை நீ அறிவாய்னு எவ்வளவோ பெரிய ஆளுங்கள்லாம் வந்து பேசிட்டு போயிருக்காங்க, right? That's the focus now. And we are talking about understanding somebody else. Come on, get a life. So interviews like these ideas. So we even did some mathematics, we did some data collection. There was this one guy who had 3 layers of tests and 2 layers of one whole day interview before hiring. Right? That was Tom. And then there was this other guy who brought people in on a gut feel. And his interview was over a cup of coffee outside the office. Right? He was looking at whether this person will have a good, meaningful work relationship with me. How does the chemistry work? Or his likes and dislikes, his hobbies having an overlap with mine. Can I have unofficial conversations with him? Those were the things he was looking for. And 5 years later, we take a snapshot and see how well these guys are performing and how well those guys are performing. It is 62% and 60%. So all the time and effort we put into fine-tuning the levels of difficulty, the 3 levels of exams and the interview process and making it confidential and all that for 2% productivity more, I don't think it's worth it. So that was a learning we had. And today, for example, we run 3-4 different approaches to actually taking people in. We have something called the incubation model, where anybody can come in, present themselves, have a short presentation to a senior management group, and say, I would like to work on this idea. We give them space to work on and a mentor, one-on-one, for 21 days. And we give them a stipend also for that time. In 21 days, if that guy is able to build something, right? It's a 21-day long interview. Think about that. So we give them that length, that long duration, slow boiling, because no creative work can ever be done with a sword dangling over your head and asking, clock is ticking, finish this problem in 2 hours. Most software companies, you know how they evaluate? They set you back 2 ways. They say there is a time limit to the test you are taking. Software doesn't get written in time limits. Very important. And then they say no internet connection. ஏன்னா நான் வந்து ஹெல்ப் பார்த்துடக்கூடாது, இந்த பைத்தான்ல இந்த இதை எப்படி பண்றதுன்னு கேட்டக்கூடாது. No software gets written without an internet connection today. Instead, set a problem which is very hard. Set an open book test. Give them all the access they need. Give them all the time they need. Evaluate them simply on the quality of the output that has come out. In fact, set 2 people on the same job. Let them collaborate. Let us see how they work together. Let us see how one person's strength overshadows and compensates for the other person's weakness. That's what we focus on when we do interviews. The idea of the software professional, we look at software as a very different thing than most companies do. When you talk about a professional, these are the words that come out in your mind. They need to be competent, very good at what they are doing. They need to have credentials, certifications, Microsoft certified, Sun certified, Oracle certified. They're all credentials and certifications. And they should fit into a well-defined role and perform smoothly. Why? Because they should be able to replace one another very easily. அடுத்த 5 நாள் நான் வரமாட்டேன் அப்படின்னா no problem. That person can replace you. That is the idea of a professional. Even today in very large MNCs, this is how work gets done. Genericity. In fact, if you need to get ISO certification in software, you need to be able to prove to your evaluating authorities that you are not dependent on one genius programmer who does the amazing work. Instead, இவர் போனார்னா இந்த அம்மா மெட்டர்னிட்டி லீவ் போனான்னா இன்ஸ்டன்ட் ரீப்ளேஸ்மெண்ட் அடுத்த 10 மாசத்துக்கு இவங்க பார்த்துப்பாங்க அப்படிங்கிற அந்த ரீப்ளேசபிலிட்டி இஸ் a very big important expectation. So something is missing in this picture: competence, credentials, certifications, professionalism. What we think is missing is passion. Looking at software as an art, something that you create in a cottage. In cottage industry, one very important thing that sets typical manufactured industry apart from them is no piece is like the other. Right? ஒவ்வொன்றிலையும் ஒரு சின்ன சிக்னேச்சர் இருக்கும், ஒரு சின்ன பிழை இருக்கலாம், ஒரு சின்ன அழகு இருக்கலாம். So that is where you embrace art. That is where you say software is manually made with love, with a touch of affection and emotion. Right? So that is the thing that is missing. We say let's sacrifice some of the benefits we will get by having extreme replaceability, generosity. We say embrace this instead. There are very few people who do this, so let's do this instead. So with that comes a conviction. This is how we need to do our software. With that comes a vision. Right? We need to build software that speaks our language. We have 41 products. Each of those products has a top manager who has been with it probably from birth. For 21 years, that person has been with that software. One of them is a rural person. One of them doesn't speak English very well. One of them is very good at English. All that will be visible in the software. Their personality will speak through that software. Most business software organizations don't want that. They don't want individualism to leak through in the final product that comes out. We say take the other side. Let that personality leak through. Customer support in the product oda panniningana it will be different. See, we are entering a world of automation. Robots might take over so many of our jobs very soon. How do you set yourself apart? Bring the human element. The human element is all about passion and emotion, conviction and vision. These are things that robots will take a little longer before they reach those gains. So products encode our convictions. If there is a product and it has a particular feature, it is because the manager of that product very strongly feels about something. Feel. That's the most important word. Feels. Conviction. It's not just about competence. And they also need passion, not just professionalism. So we need craftsmen. In fact, this is our wallpaper. Wherever we go in large events and seminars, this is our backdrop. We are proud to have this as our backdrop. We don't want jets flying in glass and steel buildings and things like that. We are proud to have this craftsmanship as our backdrop. That's the Indian Gurukul model. So you learn from your apprentice. In fact, the video was telling me about Podiyan, Kanakapillai, Aduttal, Kutali and Mudalali. That was amazing, the video I was watching. So it's pretty similar everywhere. The art of entrepreneurship is baked into the employee, and this is a new game called intrapreneurship. You are part of a large company, but you are given enough autonomy and enough sense of freedom and enough big picture thinking so that you are actually being an entrepreneur.